Well, let's talk about that feedback loop. Are there certain ways you found that are more helpful than others? For example, should I call my customers coldly? Should I ask them to fill out a survey via a link in an email? What are the ways to get the best feedback? Because a lot of times if I'm filling out a survey, there might be an incentive involved. Does that help or does it hurt? Because am I just kind of going through the motions to get a thing? What are the right ways to do this?
Yeah, it kind of depends on your audience and it kind of depends on what you're trying to learn. So I'll say broadly, there's two categories of activities that we're going to do. The first is we're interviewing. That's a very qualitative activity. It's designed to be generative. Help me uncover what needs you have, where I can create value for you. And that's something I think is really important to be a conversation. So you get context, you get the full story. I think it's really hard to get that type of research done through a survey. I know teams do it. I've seen those marketing surveys where people ask what features you want, but they're very unreliable and they don't lead to a lot of success. So the first piece is really having those rich conversations where we're getting that generative insights. Where are there gaps in your customers' worlds today? And then I think there's a second activity, which I tend to call assumption testing. Some people just call it experimentation. But regardless of what you call it, it's this idea of you start with an assumption and you're trying to collect data to evaluate, is there a risk in that assumption? So for your context, is it mostly true or mostly false? How do you evaluate that? And that's where we might get into more quantitative methods like surveys. In both instances, so in the one hand, on the interviewing side, we're generating insights. On the assumption testing or experimenting side, we're evaluating our theories. So that's sort of a way to think about both of those. In both cases, it's really key that we learn a little bit about what gets us reliable responses. So how do we ask those questions in a reliable way?
And when we talk about this, there's going to be people who love the product service experience, and there's going to be people who hate it. What is the value in having both of those, and how do you kind of take it all with a grain of salt? Because some people might give you a 1 star because they were just having a bad day. Some people just love you for some reason, and they're always going to give you the 5 star. How do you kind of balance all of the feedback?
This is exactly why we want to have rich conversations with folks. Right? If we just run a survey and say, what do you think of this product? And we get that whole gamut of 1 to 5s, we don't have context. We don't know for the people that loved it, why they loved it. We don't know for the people that disliked it, why they disliked it. We often see people dislike products because they're not the target customer, right? And we shouldn't adapt and change everything to meet their needs if they're not the target customer. That's going to come at the cost of the people who are your target customer. So I think this is the role of interviewing, is really diving in and understanding that rich context and getting really clear about this is who my ideal customer is, this is who I'm designing for, and then making sure you're getting feedback from them. And that if you do get feedback from people outside of them, you got to set that aside. And maybe eventually, if you hear enough of that feedback, you might decide there's another customer segment we can go after, and you can choose to do that. But for the most part, we want to focus on the feedback that's coming from the people that we are choosing to serve. And a lot of people make the mistake of trying to serve everybody. And there's very few products that serve everybody. And the ones that do did not start out that way.
So yeah, I'm thinking about that person who there's a squeaky wheel and they have one complaint and you go change the product just for them when it wasn't the right move. So you're saying you need to have enough of that feedback that you're going, oh, this is a trend that we're seeing. And we agree this is a problem that would make for a better customer experience if we solved it.
Yeah, let's talk through an analogy here because I think it'll help. Like, let's say that we were running a grocery store, right? And if we think about grocery stores, there's a lot of variation. We have chains like Whole Foods, that is a little bit higher end. Amazon's changing that, I think, but used to be a little bit higher end, going for a more upper class sort of socioeconomic group. And then we have maybe like the Albertsons, the Lucky, I can't even, that company's bought so many grocery stores. I don't know their current brands, but they're more on the lower end, everyday grocery store. Let's say you work at Whole Foods and you get feedback from your customers that things cost too much. That may not be feedback you're going to act on, right? Because your target customer isn't price sensitive, they're quality sensitive. And so even though a customer is telling you, hey, this costs too much, in fact, the joke about Whole Foods is its whole paycheck, right? But the people who make that joke are not Whole Foods target customer. So what do we do with that feedback? We could react to it, But to lower prices, we have to lower quality. And when we lower quality, we move away from our target customer. Now, if we look at the Albertsons, Lucky, whatever that chain is now called, I think they're buying Safeway or they are Safeway. They're the opposite, right? If their customers say, hey, things are too expensive, they want to take that seriously because they're going after the coupon clippers and the people who want deals. So it's not that all feedback is equally valid or we should act on all feedback. We have to put that feedback into context. What type of customer is telling us this? How desirable is that customer to us?